You're listening to Techsuite for the C-suite, where we bridge the gap between technology and executives. Awesome, Chris. Awesome to have you. We'll be talking about bringing the tech suite to the C-suite, so kind of like breaking down technology for executives and people who are not that technology focused, but want to learn about it and want to know the impact and how to use it in their business. Thank you for coming on. First of all, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. And as we record this, we're just kind of heading into Christmas, and I feel grateful for so many things, including the being in this Web3 industry and the people I get to collaborate with.
Yeah, you've also been pretty active on Farcaster, which is also probably something that mainly took off this year. So as we close Christmas and kind of close 2023, is that one of the most, like, you would say, interesting things that happened this year in the space?
For sure, that feels like yeah, I'm a pretty early Farcaster user, and so it has always felt to me like momentum is building. Because when I joined, I was like in the like user number 400 range.
I'm only
And there was already a lot of
16,000.
energy. Yeah,
I'm
exactly. And
only
there was already a lot of
16,000.
energy. 16,000. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But certainly as we come like towards the end of this year, and Farcaster went permissionless this year, and
Yep.
like the core primitive now is something called channels, and they're really exploding. Yeah, I really love Farcaster. I think the team has a very long-term vision on how you build a social protocol, and we're at the very early stages, but it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I totally think it's one of the most interesting things in the crypto space for sure.
I I also think that the team in how they actually build it, because it is permissionless, which is something that you can only do if you build decentralized applications, kind of a Web3 blockchain ethos. They actually have the benefit of saying, "Oh, you want that feature? Go screw yourself and implement it." And
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
not rude. Like it just makes sense. Everything is open. They have documentation. They actually care about
absolutely.
you implementing it. They will help you implement it. They just won't do it for their client. Kind of say, like, if Google were to give you an API to their search results, you can prompt Google and say, "Oh, Google search for Chris or Sam or Farcaster or Ethereum." You would get all the same Google results that anyone else gets, but you're free to choose how you would display them. So you could insta
Exactly.
render videos, you could take out videos, have it only be text search, only
Yeah,
focus on Stack Overflow as a client. A client
right.
that by search, you don't even have to type site double points like Stack Overflow. You can just have Stack Overflow. And this is kind of interesting because it also allows them to be like, screw you, we do our vision, you do yours if you feel free to do so.
Yeah, and there's like I use Farcaster through two main clients, the Warp Class client, which is the official client, but then also there's a great new app called Supercast. It's
Yeah.
subscription, so I pay a monthly subscription for it. It's a full implementation of social networking client software, and then has a bunch
Okay.
of power user features like scheduling chats and being able to connect through multiple accounts, um, keyboard shortcuts in a certain way. So yeah, that's totally not even just like they say this is an opportunity for another client. They truly mean it, and it is. And,
Yeah.
and people have built lots of stuff on Farcaster.
Also on the business side, if you think about how that decentralized social network Farcaster, with it being open and permissionless, actually works for Supercast, it is an open protocol. Like if tomorrow the Webcast team died off, they could run their own nodes.
Absolutely.
The network would still be alive and everyone would be just using Supercast. But also from how it is today and being kind of a niche client for power users, which is their exact niche they identified, that's also probably why a subscription works, which probably wouldn't for Webcast, from seeing the people complain on Twitter for paying $11 a year to pay for
Per
the
account.
storage, kind of
Yeah.
like gas fees. They pay gas fees in blockchain, but think that, oh, the social media should be free, which we can see on Twitter and Facebook. Like, the how many people in your friend group, if you scroll through Instagram, have the verified check that is not, that now means they paid $10 a month or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
But for Supercast, it's also profitable, not time wise. As far as I know, but the infrastructure cost has been paid for just through the 1 to 2 month launch hype cycle, and then the initial subscriptions coming in.
That's right. And then just to follow on that, there are lots of people who run hubs. There's a whole other company called Neymar that runs hubs as a service. You can easily run your own hub, and tons of people do it. So it's like these are not hypothetical things. These are real things about
No.
building on top of a protocol. I'd also say it's like if you understood how protocols work, which I think is a big leap for a lot of people, everyone would want Twitter to be a protocol. Everyone would want Facebook to be a protocol. Like you wouldn't have to deal with their algorithm. You could build your own, or someone else could build their own. Or like your photos wouldn't be locked in Instagram. You could do lots more interesting things with them. And so the value kind of distributes to the network and to the protocol versus like solely the company that builds um, the software, the interface.
Yeah.
And but there's still a lot of value to be extracted. Let's project Warpcast getting really huge like Twitter, and there
Yep.
being 100 different major apps that run on top of Warpcast. You still know that the Warpcast
Yep.
team will have grabbed a lot of the value, right? Most of the value.
Yep.
It's
Yep. And not Farcaster the protocol. That's also something to notice. Like as a business, if you open your tool stack, you can only build what you actually want to build and your focus, while other developers will do the work that customers ask you for, but you don't want to do. And then you can just have the customers pay them, help them, and have a thriving ecosystem. But there's something in collaboration and spirit that, to me, most current companies totally miss and lack. Also in the Web 2 world, like most companies don't have an API, and I, as a developer, I may want to run my own server to improve your tool for my specific use case, and I'll pay you your $50 a month to use the tool, and then pay you again for using the API, just so that I can work with your tool like I want to. And people miss it. Like Neymar, it's not even affiliated with the initial founding team of the
correct.
network and Webcast, but the founding team said, our focus is get as many quality users on the network as we can, and for that we will build the best client we can, while experimenting with client features and letting the network just be there. And Neymar said, oh, there are other companies who want to index the network. Airstack is also one that's good for indexing, and that want to have webhooks, integrations, all that, but they will not cater to that because that's not their core business. Their core business is driving daily active users and kind of being like the biggest client, the biggest social network, where Supercast just fills the niche. And then Neymar is like, oh, we will be the business layer. But as a company, if it would be a just regular closed source thing and not a protocol, then Neymar wouldn't even exist, and there would be no way for all these other apps to integrate and get the network effects off so quickly, because then you would need a team to build it for 2 to 3 years, and then likely you've missed your network effects because the tooling doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right. The two things I'll say is one, most Web2 companies interact with something like this because they use open source software. It's like almost impossible
Yep.
to run a business without like Linux being somewhere in your stack or some open source development language. Or I mean, it's just like we use open source all the
Firefox,
time. Yeah,
Chrome.
totally. So even if you're like
Is
the
the
most
open source
closed,
engine of Chrome.
that's right. So even if you're like the most closed, IP conscious company in the world, you're still leveraging the benefits of open source, and so in that sense it's familiar, but it's hidden in the background. And then like protocols and protocols don't have to be blockchain based or Web3. It's just that they're highly prevalent in the space. Just really opens that up a lot more, and provides some business logic around how people can participate in that network. And in fact, one of the shortcomings of open source is like maybe you contribute to Linux because you love it, you don't get paid for it. You have to figure out some way, usually like you do some consulting or you join a Red Hat or you join a Google and then you do Linux stuff at night. But I think protocols more fundamentally allow you to explore different kinds of business models to support your own work, which is one of the things I'm interested in.
Also, like, how would you explain a protocol to an executive that maybe doesn't even understand or hasn't even dove deep into kind of the whole blockchain world? Because it's something that doesn't need blockchain, and it's more, I think, a mental state. Of course, it's technically more difficult to build, but we just saw the business benefits to it. But how would you explain it?
Yeah, so one, I think like if you don't need to use blockchain, you probably shouldn't use blockchain. So it's not like blockchain is the solution to all of the things, you know. But I think kind of the maybe the easiest way, you know, and like protocol itself can mean a lot of things, and like you know even like as simple as like when we meet each other, we shake hands, and that's like a human protocol, you know. And so in a lot of ways, it's just
Yep.
when we talk about protocols, it's just like how two computers interact with each other. But what I think sort of then kind of connects when you start to talk about blockchain is that it's a public database, and all of the data is public. And so there's a lot of things you don't want to use a public database for. Like, let's just we'll just ignore sort of privacy technologies like zk sync and kind of the emerging stuff in the
Yep.
blockchain
Yep.
and just talk about the nuts and bolts. Like, you probably
We'll
don't want
talk
to put your
about it in
medical
3 years again.
yeah, that's all right. I mean, you probably don't want to put your medical records on a blockchain. Although, if you could put your medical records on some kind of portable ledger so that when you show up to a new doctor, they had your complete history, that would be amazing. But you know, maybe a public blockchain is not for that. But I
Yet.
think there's a lot of technologies that are, and you know, frankly, I think social is like such an obvious example because no one really wants their data and their posts and their family memories and locked inside of Facebook, right? And so I think that's probably a good example of like, well, what if Facebook was actually a protocol and any developer could access the data and you know present your memories and your thoughts in different ways and allow you to download them and archive them. That's probably a better way to think about a protocol. I like I don't have experience of like trying to convince a company to build a protocol, um, but certainly to use it or to build on top of it is something I've done more. You know, like one of my Web3 lives was pretty big. Um, I did a lot of work with NFTs and companies using NFTs. And so you can think of that NFT as a protocol. And then it's like much easier to describe that like, oh, people have a inventory full of these objects and the objects are open for anyone to view. So let's talk about the types of businesses you might want to build that utilize these objects, whether that's like a very easy one, which is like access. Like, hey, if your company has an NFT, then and your super fans buy it, you now all of a sudden have a way to identify super fans
Yep.
and provide experiences for them or special things for them because you know they're super fans, you know. But even so, it's like you can find an adjacent company and access their super fans and give them experiences. And so that's like something I haven't seen a lot, but I've always been interested in. In fact, like within the crypto space, we do this a lot, which is like, hey, if you're a member of Nouns, you get this other thing for free, you know, because we love Nouns. But
That
I
is
believe
such
that
an
like
awesome growth hack. Like we growth hacked um, into getting 200,000 plus Twitter like super tweeters and super influencers without paying or even adding them, just by
totally.
including their community. Their community tagged them so much that they wanted to mint our stuff, but our marketing guy was like, oh no, 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 and they didn't get that it's just the whitelist and not the mint. Like they actually wanted to mint, so the whole like project marketing wise fell apart. But that growth hack, it's
It's
insane.
incredible. Yeah, it's incredible, totally. And what are you really doing? You know, it's funny because another sort of a totally separate topic would be like how you do targeted advertising on a platform like Facebook, right? So Facebook has like lookalike audiences, and you can be like, send this advertisement to everyone who loves Coca-Cola, you know, but because you know, we believe that Coca-Cola fans are gonna like our product. And so you pay Facebook to do this, right? You pay
Yep.
per click and you pay all that stuff. And so here you actually, with having access to people's wallets, you can do something similar, permissionless and for free, which is just that, right? Let me find everyone who loves Nouns. Let me find everyone
Yep.
who,
Like
you know,
yep.
minted a Coca-Cola NFT, which is it.
Just for the executive listening, free in this term means just your own developers accessing it,
Right.
or your intelligent data intelligence paying a monthly fee to a platform that lets you access that data, but the actual data access is free. So with the Facebook ads, you pay Facebook for the data access and you don't get the data. Here you don't pay for the data access, you just still have to come up with the means of getting the data. You may have to pay for that though, just to make the
Yeah,
free
it's totally.
clear for
Again, it's like
business to have.
imagine that this is all sitting in a public database. You need to query the database, right? And
Yes.
and then so if you even think about it that way, there's like tons of business intelligence that comes out of querying the database. Um, and so having the entire internet, or in our case, like the entire on-chain internet, being queryable by this, it's ultimately an open ledger, but we can think of it as a database, just like unlocks all kinds of intelligence about what people are doing online, who these people are, should we invite them into our community, things like that.
Yep. Also, like if you go further, because you just it just came to my mind with the Farcaster client that we've talked about, the actual client still accruing value and the protocol accruing value. If you build the open thing, like say you build the open shipping thing, instead of just it being for your company, um, IBM and I think it was one of the big cruisers. I'm not sure the exact company that it was, but IBM built a blockchain based logistics system with them. But their problem with selling it was that by being cooperated with a big shipping company already, the other companies wouldn't join because why should we go on the system of a competitor? And IBM just launched it on their own, it may have worked better, or if it was just an open source project that many
Yeah,
companies started using, because there is an awesome IBM client for that, but others they can still build their own. So like if you're a big cruise shipper, you can build your own pipeline as long as you follow the protocol guidelines, and the protocol is the one laying out that the logistics are properly handled. So you just visualize it and integrate it into your stack yourself. Then you still have value as like the IBM building that stack, because people will not want to build their own, so they'll pay you and you'll get the data of your users and be able to learn from that. And others will be like, no, I don't want to pay you, I don't want to give you the data, I'll just use that other one or build my own. While going back to the ad example, if there was a Farcaster client that collected, say, metrics on how long you were viewing a cast, for example, and all this metadata that is not in the Farcaster protocol, um, then you could build even more targeted ads and actually have an ad business on top of Farcaster, as long
yeah,
as the client is good enough for people to use. Otherwise, they'll go to other clients who don't do it, and you can opt out of it. You as a company are not limited to it, but you could do it. And this is also kind of something that where a protocol opens way more doors than just a closed source thing. Same thing with blockchain, but blockchain is more financial, as you said. You can get who paid more for that or who is collecting that. That is blockchain compared to the Farcaster open social network that we're talking about here.
yeah. Although in both cases, so one, I think the huge ad network will be built on top of Forecaster, but also on top of um, blockchain as a whole.
Yeah.
I think it's still very early, right? We don't really have enough daily active users to monetize at the tiny rate that ads get monetized. But you do have so much more
Yep.
data. Like we all have access to it, so in that way, it's like very democratized. But so much more data on like, well, when did you open your first account? When did you make your first trade? When did you buy your first NFT? Like there's just so much rich data there. That like the what I hope doesn't sound scary is like this is not particularly personal information. Um,
No.
I guess like depending on how you look at it, buying an NFT is a personal thing. Like I buy a piece of artwork because I like it, and now the whole world knows I bought that piece of artwork. But that's like never that's never unclear to the user, right? It's actually like much more like buying an NFT is like posting to Instagram, where it's like, hey, you own this thing. Everyone can see you own this thing, and that has its own dynamics, which is like now I'm collecting things on chain as part of my identity and part of like why I
Yep.
want to show off my
And
interests.
also showing off in that world means you actually show off that it's authentic, because people can see, oh, he didn't buy a fake watch, he bought the original
That's
one
right.
for say 100 grand. And to the people that are in flex culture, like a friend of mine had a bag, like a regular just kind of handbag style thing, um and he bought that from like one of the top three fashion brands for around 600 bucks at the time, being an 18-year-old who just got his first job. And people in his friend group all were the fake ones, and they asked him like, oh, is it, they didn't even believe it was real, so he had to carry around the shop receipt for that bag just to show that it's real. And with NFTs, you wouldn't have to do that because everyone could just see themselves, and probably at some point in the future, clients will just have a check. Oh, this is the OG one, and if you don't have the check, you're out. And that check is not in the image; it's actually in the client, because if it's on top of the image, say on the top right of each image, then people will just mint fake ones where that check is already in the actual image. So there will be different ways of verifying that.
Yeah, and
But
and
just
and
take
there are ways like
flexibility.
this happens. There are ways that this happens. Like my real interest in blockchain is just the coordination between people, and so that leads to DAOs, which are essentially token-based organizations, and those do that already, right? It's like you can vote if you hold this token. Like that software verifies that you have, first of all, you hold the token and that it is like an official token from the source. And if you try to show up with like a fake version of that token, it just would not work, right?
Yeah, no. Also, but if you build DAOs and all those tokenized organizations or protocols and so on top of blockchain, could you go into the trade-offs for an organization thinking about utilizing blockchain or protocols?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many levels in an organization stack, right? So I would just say like if you're a software company and you're building your software on top of blockchain or open protocol, there's like a whole series of pros and cons to that. I think you nailed some of them. The pros is like you now open up your software to an army of developers on the internet who can come and help and contribute for free in a similar open source way. You allow people to create custom uh, interfaces to access the data, lots of improvements and stuff like that. And again, if you're like the primary client, you get to see you get to see other people experiment, and you get to take some of the best of those experiments. Um, the downside is you give up a significant amount of control. You just do, and other people can monetize the data, and that's in some ways like a philosophy decision. But like I often think, and what I talk to is like organizations that they're just traditional companies and they've been around for 20 years, and they're interested in how they can use this stuff. And so there's two sort of different. Again, I'm having a product of Termverse. We're a DAO operations platform, and so we like help people coordinate using tokens. Um, in a like kind of project management like and social like software. And so there's just like in that way it's like, hey, sure, you're Porsche and you make cars, so we probably don't need to verify that these are real Porsches because everyone knows, and you don't need to put your Porsche software on the blockchain, but you do have a lot of fans, and so like how do you rally those fans, right? Like, what do you do for those fans? And like, these include customers, yes, but also just like people who love Porsche, who are um, who are not going to own one, or they aspire to own one, or maybe when they get older, they will own one. And so there's a one series of discussions I have that are around like your fandom and how are we going to motivate them and how we get like true buy-in and engagement with your brand in like a super fan type of way. The other is a lot of companies are just interested in the future of work and how to make decisions as an organization and how to try different things across small cross functional teams that can be nimble and make their own decisions. So those are like the two areas that I am like deeply interested in when it intersects between companies and blockchain. And so let's go down one of those paths. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, so you're saying the main trade-off is you give up control, and then the thing you can do though without even giving up control, if you just use it as an internal tool, is binding for fandom, or just using it as a means of internal organization that is way more efficient than typical governance structures today.
Yeah, that's right. And there's so many like these are my areas of interest. I think there's like so many different things to do it. But yeah, it's like there are layers of a stack of a company, and one of them can be as radical as you never form as a company because you're just an internet organization. But also all the way down to like, hey, no, we sell a physical product and we have our company. The company's good. Like, but we really want to engage our fans. Like, what are the technologies to do that? So it's just there's a whole stack inside of the company, and blockchain fits into many different layers of it, right? And
So
just yeah, the one I just tend to work on is either like let's talk about your communities, and the other would be like and let's talk about the future of work.
So if you have a community like Porsche, which has huge fandoms spanning generations, like even for me in the family, like my dad is the first one who really got into Porsche, um, and he aspired to own one. Now he has one.
Yeah.
It's also a family thing. Like my brother is deeply into it, and I'm not that deep into it, but I still kind of get the fandom vibe just because I have two fanatics in the family. Um, and they actually have an NFT project, but if say you're a brand and you may have some following already, some fandom, but you don't already have an NFT project, you think about how to use it. Like, what are the kind of steps to go through in your mind to get to the point where you say, "Oh, this makes sense," or "This doesn't," and this is how we should do it.
Yeah. So I think it probably shouldn't start with like let's be an NFT project. I think it probably starts at like what are the initiatives you're trying to push? How can we get our fans on board with these initiatives authentically and help them out? And so for like I actually have no interaction with Porsche. I do love Porsches, but this is not like an organization I've ever spoken to. But like take an initiative that they have going on, which is like they're going big on in electric cars, right?
Yep.
Porsche is going to be electric, right? And so I bet there's a
Sadly
group.
for the core fan, yeah.
I was going to say I bet there's a group of people that are not happy about this, and there's also a group of people who are super happy about this, and then there are new people who have never paid attention to Porsche who are going to be psyched, right? And so how do you like take this initiative, electric cars, and sort of involve your fandom? And so one idea would be just find what those people what are they interested in? Like what about electric is interesting to them, and like maybe we'll just make the assumption that well, people who are psyched about the electric Porsche like the low emissions and the the environmental aspect of it. And so okay, so now you have a group of people who are like following along and they're interested in what you're doing, and you can identify their interest in this is maybe environmental. And so like how can we like get all of those people to organize and focus on those interests? And so there's just like an example idea would be well okay cool we're going to release an NFT project, um, and then all of the proceeds from that NFT project are going to go into a treasury. And then that treasury, what we do with that treasury is decided amongst the fans. And so if you wind up with this, this treasury of money, like let's even use smallish numbers of like $100,000 in NFT sales. Um, and now you can bring your fandom in and basically say like, let's vote on what to do with this money. In fact, before we do that, what you guys propose on what we should do with this money? And someone will propose like we should clean up the oceans, and someone else will propose like, hey, we should do a more general marketing campaign on emissions. And then the holders of those NFTs get to vote on which one of these initiatives are a good idea. And maybe it's like, hey, it's a $20,000 initiative to like clean up the oceans, and it's like a $50,000 initiative to run a more general marketing campaign around emissions. And so now you have a community of people. They bought the NFT. They're interested in this topic. It's all connected to Porsche. It's a little bit one step down. We're not talking about like, what should the drivetrain of these things be? But it's like more like grabs the uh, actual interest and focus of the people. And now they're submitting ideas, and the group is deciding to vote and fund these ideas. And this is just like just a super engaged community now. People who are like really bought in. Uh, I think Porsche is probably a part of this community, and probably token holders that get to vote. But it's not like your traditional marketing and legal team with a tight grip on everything that happens, right? And so it's just kind of the organic internet way to do it. Imagine if you had the subreddit for Porsche electric Porsche fans,
Yep.
and then you had that subreddit could have a little bit of a treasury, and then they could vote on what to do with that treasury. I think you have like a super engaged subreddit, and thus your early super fans. And so that's how I tend to approach this when I think about like, okay, you have customers, but we want to turn them into super fans and super customers. And the second part of that, which is like maybe even more in the marketing vein, is we do the same thing, but the whole premise is like we want to spread memes. Like we want to spread the Taco Bell memes. We're Taco Bell. We want our users to spread memes. And so now you have this shared treasury where all these people can create memes, and then people can vote on the best memes, and you start to financially reward people for doing that work for you, frankly, right? But also like to spread the meme, and I think that's like another super powerful example that's
Yeah.
underexplored.
One example of those meme contests, as we're around Christmas right now, would be like each day of December until the 24th, we will up the prices. So the best meme on the first will get $50 under the treasury,
Totally.
while on the 24th you're getting $1,000 in grand prizes, and in total you may have just spent around $5,000 for a marketing campaign. But since you already aggregated your super fans, you already know each day you're getting memes because you financially incentivized them with starting from 50 up to 1,000, which is in the US, Europe, a lot of money, and even more money because now we're
So much money.
permissionless. We're all over the world. Like if you're sitting in a country that doesn't have that much money, where $50 is basically a week of income for you, then you're creating the best memes. You're creating 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 memes, and if one of those is the best, you win 50. But as a brand, you just spent $50 to get maybe 100 people, 10 people, however many, to
Yeah,
create marketing
publishing.
content for you. You can then
Absolutely.
share these results organically through your other traditional social media channels. The community will also share the best memes on their channels. So how much marketing ad spend equivalent did you just get for, first of all, aggregating the community and so on, which is basically like running a marketing campaign, um, which you can just have two people in your organization do, as long as you have talked to Chris before and just don't make it, oh, we need an NFT project, but actually have it make sense. But if you just did that, how much ad spend do you save just from organic marketing in Christmas?
Yeah,
And dude, I'm running
absolutely.
Google ads now. I'm getting killed on Google ads cost because
Yeah.
it's 5x what it is in the rest of the year. So I'm just praying to get through December so that in January we may actually get more leads, because we can't convert in December if we don't have enough leads just because of budget constraints. But
Yeah,
if you
that's
get
right.
free money, basically free distribution,
And
it's
the
even.
other, I think that you're clearly right. The free distribution from a marketing, from like a pure sort of KPI based marketing angle is like it's amazing. You're right, super cheap to get lots of memes and hopefully have Twitter flooded with your brand through December, right? And then
Instagram,
there's
TikTok as
this
well.
all of it, right? And then there's this the harder to measure part is like giving control, because a lot of companies do these meme contests where it's like submit your meme into this form and we will choose the best one. But this is like the community also choosing.
Yep.
Imagine you have a mobile app and every day it's like December 21st today, and you see all of the memes posted to December 21st, and you just vote on the best ones. And so now you have ownership, right? This is not like you're playing in the garden of the brand, and they're making their decision. It's like you also make a decision. So the part of the KPI
Yep.
that I think is hard to measure is like, well, now you feel ownership. You're like much more connected to this brand. When December's over and January comes, you're still thinking about the brand, and feel empowered and connected to the brand, and even feel like you have some maybe intellectual ownership over what just happened.
Just imagine getting a collective for voting for the one that won that day.
Correct. Yeah, that's it. So that's why you can actually sell the NFT, like the money from the NFT goes back into this project, and then so that's what I mean by a treasury. It's like, hey, you just sold $100,000 worth of NFTs. Now all of that lives in a smart contract, which you can think of as a wallet, and
Or like
now
your
that
bank
money is
account
actually going to be,
traditionally.
yeah, like a bank account,
A
and
shared
then
bank
that
account.
money, that's right. It is a share bank. That's totally it. And then that money is being put right back into like the marketing of the meme contest here, or in this case, or my other case, which was like uh, social good initiatives, because that's your initiative, right? And so
But
again, I
yeah,
think this sort of definitely starts with like, what are your objectives, What are your core initiatives? How do you get the internet to embrace them and not reject them? And how do you like truly organically make this happen where it's like you are working alongside your fans and your customers rather than you are trying to tell them what to do on the internet?
Also, if it's not just you like activating your community, also you have some voting in there, so you already have to use the basics of voting and organization that you talked about in your DAO focused
Yeah, that's right.
earlier, also in the internal structure, but we'll get and dive into those in a bit. Just before that, if you also have the funding capabilities, you could also just not only fund public goods in general, but you could do retroactive funding public goods, which is a big thing in the blockchain tech space, where what we do is, oh, we have launched a token for our tech, so now we have millions of dollars. So each couple of months, we go back and over that span, reward the projects that helped build, say, the best tech or the best documentation or onboarded the most people, and people will vote for that with kind of stewards, and you just give them your voting rights, and then they vote for you and whatever. There are many ways to do that, but that's also something you could do in the community, where in the community you say, oh, I'm not that active, but I know Chris is, so I give my voting right to Chris, and Chris will vote for me. And then if Chris has an awesome project that helped the Porsche community, then through that community, that project will also get some funds to be appreciated more, and then more people will create projects in your community because you give them money afterwards. So they may expect some money in return, but they know it's free work in the first place, and they may not get anything, but you'll have more people do it. There's
Yeah,
also
that's right.
kind of another thing you could go to. But if we then go into governance structures for the voting itself and for that DAO, you would need governments, right? Like you need in a corporation, or how would that play out?
Yeah, yeah, so you do have voting, right? So we're still talking about the case where you're now giving your fans NFTs or tokens, and then allowing them to vote on anything. Let's just say on small initiatives. That like fundamentally is governance because now it's like, okay, you have money in a treasury, you have voters who are these token holders, and they're going to vote on what wins, and uh, and so that's like a pretty lightweight version of government governance, and compared to like a board or even compared to like a pure DAO. Um, but you have some basic decisions to make, like what is the voting structure? Is it one token, one vote? Is it, could you do one human, one vote? So if someone buys 5 NFTs, they don't get 5 times the vote. Or do you want to do quadratic funding? So it's more about how many people vote for you, not how many total tokens have voted for you. I think those are some of the pretty major decisions you make around voting and governance, but also like it's pretty lightweight in the context of we have a small treasury and we're trying to decide what to do with it. But what's layered on top of that, and especially if you have a bigger treasury that you were doing this, is like what are the norms, and um, and that's where maybe it's a little bit harder, which is like, okay, if now instead of $100,000, I'm talking about $1 million, and your initiative is still sort of environmental based, well, what does that really entail? Is this like someone puts up a proposal that they're going to recycle for the week, and and so therefore they should give $100,000? And so that's where the government. That's where you end up having social norms, and the voting shakes that out, right? Because the people decide like, no, that's not worth 100 grand. And even more so, you wind up with people in the organizations who are experts, and so you'll wind up with recycling experts who will tell you like exactly how much that's worth, which then sort of can then form that idea from like, oh, you're right, it shouldn't be 100 grand, but you know what, we should give 100 grand to 5,000 people who can commit to this. And so, those proposals kind of will take a life on their own. Someone will propose it, and then, the expertise of the community will help, first of all, make sure that like ridiculous things don't pass. And then second of
Yep.
all, will help shape this into maybe a proposal that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you can also just use it for your business, right? So if it's your business who has now
Yeah.
got the community, it just doesn't have to be any recycling. It could also be, if you're Apple, oh, you have to recycle 1,000 iPhones now, just because, oh, that's the spin we put on it as a business, because we want, or somehow had the mandate to get value directly out of it, or we want to use it as a marketing campaign. Oh, here's people we just fund, kind of like Nike does with their sports partners. oh, we just
Right.
fund you, do cool stuff, like the Casey Neistat Nike commercial, where he's just traveling around the world for 30 days with the 100 grand or whatever it was he got from Nike, which was their most well-received marketing campaign at that time. Oh, Casey just traveled and was like, "Oh, just do it," as a slogan. It has nothing to do with the actual shoe, besides that he's wearing
Totally.
it and running around the world. But it sparked so much emotion. So you could also curate those kind of ideas and business benefits. Like you said, if experts come in out of recycling and they comment and critique your proposals, and now as a business, I'm like, okay, what if I do my own recycling proposal that we wanted to do internally and have it for free of charge, expert
Yeah.
checked in the community, and I even get community money that they paid for my internal project. And then if I add some money on top internally, um, I may have reduced cost or have alleviated my own internal cost because the community is now paying for my internal initiative. Like you can also
Yeah,
leverage it
and
like that.
totally, absolutely. And then also like you're now doing an initiative that you know has community buy-in because they voted yes.
Yes.
It's like let's be like most initiatives in companies fail. Like even most
Yep.
marketing, I would say fails, right?
Yes.
Where you think people want X, but actually X just made people really mad. Or no one, or more likely, like no one cared at all about the thing you just tried.
Oh,
And like we see
or
this in product development all the time. Like I'm going to add this new feature. People are going to love
yes.
it, and they tell me they love it, right? But then it's like, but then no one uses that feature, you know? Yeah,
The most awesome example of that is, have you ever tried filtering for price on Airbnb?
I have, but not recently.
If you filter for price on Airbnb, you can filter for price range, but you can't filter highest to lowest or lowest to highest. You can't get a listing of the cheapest ones unless
Right,
you
right.
put the sliders to only include the cheapest ones. And they actually tried give you the option to go lowest to highest. But what they realized is people have asked for that all over the place because they want to save money, obviously. But what ends up happening is they are not buying on Airbnb because all the offerings that are that cheap are just too bad,
Or
and
just not
people,
nice.
if
Yeah.
they book it, have a bad experience. So they said that's what you are asking for, but you will not want it. But if you have it be a community vote with the community discussion and all that, you get those ideas out of the way. You may try them, it may work or may not work, but you have at least some more testing before you actually start development.
Yeah. And I would say like having a vote, it's like it's pretty common that you'll get. I mean, the example you just said, right? Like you'll get people saying like, "Hey, I want cheapest to lowest," but then that actually doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And but it's actually very easy to tell them like, "Yeah, I just want cheapest to highest." Um, I would say like, but when you have a token and you have a treasury and it's limited, like you understand the trade-offs. That's like people are like more. The feedback is better. The things they choose is better because they realize there's like a real trade-off of like, oh, there's only 100 grand here. If we spend 10 grand on X, well, now we don't have that 10 grand on something else, right?
Ooh,
And so
say
that's where
you're
it's like people are,
yeah. Say you're a
yeah,
software company. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's too good.
yeah,
What you're saying is too good. Say you're a software company and you go out and you have that community fostered, and now you're like, oh, give me the top features we want to implement. We'll give you 10 days of our developer time, which would mean the treasury pays us, say, like $10,000, whatever.
yeah.
And in that 10 days you have to now decide what feature we will implement in that.
That's right. And so like people are just a lot more serious about than like they understand that there's a resource trade-off. Like, we're running companies. Everything you do is a resource trade-off. So a lot of it's like, oh, that's a great feature, but we'll get to it next year because here are other higher priorities. Then like, but as a customer, you're not thinking about the resource trade-offs. You're like, yeah, just do this little thing for me, please. But allowing that level of participation makes them realize that they're making resource trade-offs too. And then you're also benefiting from like the wisdom of the crowd because someone still may really want the green button to be purple, but that will just be
Yep.
one, the other 99% of the people will realize that that is not a good use of time,
Or it is what they want to do because they're memeing, and now you get 10 grand and you
right?
just change the button
Totally.
color, right?
That's
Like
right. And then you have
as a
the whole,
business owner, it's way too powerful to not do it, but you have to do it properly because you need to have the actual engaged community. You can't just go out and say, oh, we'll give 10 grand to whoever has the best idea. You have to actually foster it.
yeah. And the flip side of that is that I still remain skeptical that great products are going to be built from DAOs, because now, you still need to have a vision. You still need to have one person with a team with a vision you still need to be hyper efficient with your capital to build these things. You need to be able to pivot without a vote every time. So it's like your company, your product development team, like probably is not fundamentally a DAO, but you can use this software to like engage with your community and your customers and lots of parts, your external partners. So this is not to discourage people from like trying to build a company out of the DAO, which I think is a super interesting like thing to try to crack. But
Yeah,
just
but
it's like, imagine you're a
there's
day-to-day business and everyone voted on everything, it'd be a very
there's
slow
a,
moving
there's a
business.
reason there's a reason innovation doesn't come out of an association. It may be problems
It,
of an
yeah,
association that get solved by a startup, but there's a reason the startup and kind of the, oh, we have to break things, go fast, and just don't care about voting, just to get things done. And then as we grow bigger, of course we have struggles, but there's a reason why innovation happens there and not in big
absolutely. But
associations.
I actually could like talk about one of my own projects. This is just such a good
Sure.
example of the power of this stuff and back to the Farcaster conversation. So Farcaster was the protocol was built by a team, a startup out of California, although they're a remote team, and they built an open protocol. And so I show up to Farcaster, and there's like the main client, which we know is Warpcast today, being built by that team, but also tons of like creative tech built on top of this. One obvious example that always comes to my mind is like I found this tool called Searchcaster, and it was like Google for Farcaster, and then I dig into it, and it's like, oh, it's just an independent developer, a guy named Greg, who just did it for fun because he loved this protocol. And in my early days, I find dozens of these examples, and so now I'm thinking like, oh, this community of developers building on top of Farcaster who are all doing this for free at this point. It's like it's so amazing. I want to support these people, so I created a DAO called Purple, and lots of people bought in. The first 20 tokens were selling for 1 ETH, 2 ETH. And so next thing you know, we have a treasury. We're completely disconnected from the software company. I never didn't meet them. I've never spoke to them. But now we have a DAO that is built for the community on top of this protocol, which is being built by a private company. And so what we do, we started voting to distribute our funds to the developers in the ecosystem, not to the original business, but to all of the people
The
building great stuff
indies,
on top
the
of the
third party
protocol, right?
people in the community, right?
That's right. And so that has, we're over a year old. We've raised like over 110 ETH. We've distributed, I don't know,
just
75 ETH
just
at this
just to
point.
put it in context for executives, at current ETH prices, there is more than $200,000 in community funding for things that involve the ecosystem of your core business that are not funded by you, not paid for by you, but increase your network effect as a business. Just to make that clear, that's over
Yeah,
$200,000 at current prices. So a year ago, still same, probably because it's been kind of stable. It's been over $200,000 that are cashed out to indie developers that otherwise have no incentive to build, and now they have one. Just to make that point clear and drive it home, because I think it's very
yeah,
important.
absolutely. And there's this completely independent, DAO, like independent group of people who are raising money and supporting stuff happening on top of the protocol, marketing, development, all of that stuff. And
Yep.
so it's kind of like a superpower for the team building the protocol, which is like they get to focus on building the protocol. They get to use all of their money and resources on engineering,
Yes.
and they have basically the community doing the work for them. And so what do we get at it from as the community? Purple the DAO. Well, if one, it's like it's cool and it feels good, and we love this ecosystem, so we get to literally thank the people doing the best work with our money. But there's also like a sense of ownership and just identity, and so it's like, okay, you know what, you are a part of this greater Farcaster ecosystem. But oh, you're a member of Purple. That means you're one of the people who supports this ecosystem financially and through governance, and through various community initiatives that have a treasury behind it. So I think this is all like we do it all in this like super crypto native way because it's like this crypto protocol, and then we have this crypto organization sitting on top of it. But if you reduce it down, it's really just like there is a company building a product, and there are people who love that product who independently are supporting other people who love that product. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and also if you break that down as an organization, like let's dive into the organizational structure of how you can use that for governments. We just talked a lot about, okay, how can you have like an external superfan community that we kind of called DAO, or we took the best aspects of what DAOs do to actually make them practical is I think what we did, because the fully decentralized autonomous organization, yeah, just make it more practical to what it is today. And now you have things like Purple or your superfan community. But if you just like the other thing you talked about is how can you actually improve your own business by doing something like that?
Yeah, and I feel that that is like so that this is like I just lump into that category of the future of work, right? And
Yeah,
so I think there's one very practical part of this, and then there's one very experimental part. Just to like speak to the experimental part first, because I think lots of experiments need to be run. And inside big
yes,
companies, this is like, you have an innovation team. I'm not talking about huge budgets, but like, how do you sort of empower cross-functional teams to just be more autonomous, right? And do more things on their own. And so it could be as simple as like, hey, we have this innovation budget. There's 5 teams, and they all put up a proposal for a piece of that innovation budget. Then like whoever in this experiment votes on giving that money out, and then those teams kind of then independently operate. They have their own goals, but they independently operate. They don't need to vote on everything. They can choose how to do it internally. So maybe it is like your cross-functional team, 2 devs, a product manager, and a graphic designer, and maybe BD or something. Those teams can kind of run their own structure. One of them may be like, hey, let's have frequent proposals and vote on all of the major things we're going to do. But another maybe more lightweight, which is like, great, we're going to put the PM in charge, or we're going to put the BD guy in charge, and we're just going to report back to the organization what we're doing, and then see if, and then maybe there's like vote points at the end, right? Like, hey, vote to see if we get to
but
hit the next milestone or something like that,
from
right?
the experimental stuff you talked about, like Google has their what they call 10% projects. Like 10% of your
Yeah,
time you have to work on something that is not your core work, but that could be cool, experiment, learn something, document something, try something. And most of their biggest projects and products today started because somebody wanted to solve a problem in their spare
yeah,
time, meaning like their Google scheduled time, you have to do something else. Um, you can actually like use that system, right? So if you just make a proposal and then you get together the 5 guys who actually want to do it and you put some of that funding towards it, you don't even have to have a culture of 10%, but you can foster innovation inside of a
absolutely.
company, because you can say, oh, we have 500 person days per year. If you're a big corporation, that works. If you have 100 and more employees, that works. And we will just split them, voted across all the projects. So if you make a proposal for 200 out of those, and enough of our employees vote, because we will give you, say, an extra day of holiday if you voted. So because you have to somehow incentivize voting, otherwise you will just have the usual 2 to 4% vote. But if you give
Yep,
them a day of holiday, everyone will vote, because then they can get the 24th and the 25th, 26th off for Christmas, for example, right? So you could kind of incentivize it like that. Everyone who votes has the 24th off fully. Otherwise, feel free to come into work because you didn't vote, so everyone is going to vote, obviously.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
totally interesting.
and then you have the people actually do the work who want to do the work. Now you have highly motivated people inside of your organization coming up with proposals and building a startup inside your organization, or improving your tooling where it actually needs to be done, because they feel enough pain to feel strongly about actually doing something, and you give them the time and the means to do it. And I think this is the most superpower you talked about, Chris.
Yeah, and it is, and again, it's like, people understand it's like an easier way to understand your resource trade-off, which is like maybe it's just like, hey, we're only going to choose 3 teams. Um, so, because of business requirements, like we can only spare 3 teams, or 2 teams. So all of where like Google does the like everyone gets Friday. I don't even know if that's true anymore, but anyway, that's like the myth. It's like everyone
It
gets
was
their
it
day.
was true. It for sure was true at some point. Not sure
Yeah,
because they grew corporate.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, like maybe you're just like, well, we can't do 4-day weeks. We can't give everyone Friday off, but we can support 3 teams every quarter. But you know what? 50 teams have ideas, and so who makes that decision? Um, these are things that can be played with, right? Like maybe it's like the whole employee base gets to make the decision, or all of the engineers get to make the decision on what's high value. Those are like, yeah, I think just super interesting
You could
governance
like
experiments inside and work.
you said, if you make government experiments like that, you could also have some decisions or some amount be just team focused. Like you could say, oh, we have taken the 500-person days again. You have 200 days general, so everyone in the company votes, and then you have 100 days for marketing. And part of that could be someone makes a proposal for 50 days of work and 50 days of ad budget, because it's basically you know how much your person day costs, so you can actually do that and do the equation. And then you have 100 days for just engineering, so just the engineering community votes on those, so you could actually
Totally.
incorporate all of them.
Then I move to like a more practical side of things. This is like maybe outside of token voting and governance, but
Mhm.
I think squarely in the blockchain realm, which is like a lot of companies have a lot of freelancers. You may have a project that pops up where all of a sudden you need 5 data scientists, but you only need them for 6 months. So or even shorter, right? Like you have a surge on an engineering project, so you need to hire 2 more engineers to join the team for 3 months. And that's like a very hard unsolved problem. And you don't go through the full interview process like you're going to hire an employee, right? You're not going to like burn all of the resources it takes to find someone great, um, like in the same way as if they were joining your organization. But you need to find someone great really quickly. And so, you can go to like a LinkedIn, which is very gameable and pretty stale. Um, you can go to their GitHub if it's an engineer, which is great if they have public projects, but if they've mostly been working on private projects, it's not that useful. But like when you bring sort of blockchain into this equation of future of work, I think you can like have people attest to great work. And so,
Yes.
one of my big interests now is like attestations. And so, it,
Have you looked into
you,
Bounty Caster?
yeah, Bounty Caster is great, totally. So imagine Bounty Caster, right? Bounty Caster is a way to do bounties, offer bounties. In this case, on Farcaster is where they've started, and so you can
Yep.
say something like simple, like I want to know the top 100. These are like highly specific to my interest. Like I want to know who the top 100 voters in Purple are, and I will offer
Yep.
100 USD to anyone who will do it. Now so that's step one, right? So now I'm just
Yep.
sort of looking for a data analyst. Now, when they succeed, I can now offer them credentials or an attestation to say like, hey, they did really great work, right? And so this is kind of what you see on like Fiverr or Upwork or TaskRabbit or any of these services. eBay is the kind of classic example where you upvote and you star rate people, but it's all kind of very locked in that system, right? And so this is like a really good use case of blockchain is like, okay, all of my attestations, and attestation really is just like a technical jargon for like I am saying officially and signing
I
this
am
document.
stating that.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's the testing, right? So I am stating that, and I sign it, so it comes from me. And so it
Yep.
can be like this person did a great job with this bounty, and so they do 100 bounties, and when you do your bounty caster and they apply, you have the rating. But now let's take that
Yep.
same person and that same bounty caster. Well, now they're applying for a job, or they want to join your organization for a 6-month data project, and it's like totally not connected at all to Bounty Cast. There's like some other data analysis thing you need to do. But you can go look at the blockchain and see how many attestations they have and can see they've done really great work. And so I'm just very interested in like the future of work being smaller core teams that bring on lots of freelancers on and off, and then
Yep.
having better ways of telling that a freelancer can do the job or they're talented or people have had lots of great experiences with them in a very portable way. So it's not locked in some one piece of hiring software or something like that, right? It's not as gameable as LinkedIn
No.
because you've done the work. So I think that becomes
Also,
very
you
powerful for
see the
organizations.
payment. You can actually
That's
see
right.
the payment on LinkedIn. If I give you a recommendation that, oh, you're the best I ever knew, no one knows that I have paid you or that I haven't paid you, and we're just
Correct.
circle jerking, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
if we do bounties, and we can do bounties and Bounty Caster as well, for freelance gigs. Like if you post a freelance gig and you're like, oh, I need 5 data scientists for 3 months. This is the scope of the project that I need you for. Here is the amount of money that I'm paying. Please apply in the comments of the bounty. But you could build a better system for that. And then you can hire your freelancers through that. You can see their attestations, and you actually know when you give an attestation that they have done the work, and they get actual feedback where they are like, this is a paying customer of ours giving that attestation, and everything is publicly verifiable. And that verifiable is, I think, the thing that needs to be highlighted here.
Absolutely, totally. So I believe so I think this is happening, and when fast forward to like this is how work works. It's great
Nice
for like
foreplay.
it's great for like the organization because you're like, hey, our organization is actually only 5 people,
Yep.
but there are 100 developers who work for us at any given time, and we know who they are. We can bring them on easily. We can roll them off easily, and all of that. It's also been great as the engineer. Um, if you fancy a lifestyle where you work on different projects, you get to take a break when you want to. There's a lot of like, there was like, people thought with the Ubers and the um, like Postmates of the world, they were calling it like this 1099 economy. Like, oh, everyone's going to be a freelancer, 1099 economy. But the problem is that it became a race to the bottom. But I do believe like people do want that kind of flexibility. They do want something that resembles like the freelancer economy. And so it doesn't have to be a race to the bottom when you can just prove that I'm better than you, so you should pay me more money because you look, it's verifiable that I've done a better job than these other people.
Yeah.
Again, like an Uber job can be very commodified, where an engineering job is less commodified, right? So,
Also
um,
on Uber, if you are a 3-star driver, I might not want to send my daughter with you, but if you're a 5-star driver, I want to pay double just to get my daughter home safe. Like if I
yeah,
have a
absolutely.
say you have a 14-year-old daughter and you're in the US, Like I was just in the US a couple of weeks ago, and I had to download Uber at the airport because that is the best and most efficient way to get around in the US. Like what the fuck is
Absolutely.
your public transport? I'm used to German public transport where it goes, but it's delayed. And I also experienced Swiss public transport that is awesome and just works, kind of like the Asian ones. Like, what the fuck are you doing in the US? Like, there's no actual thought about city planning and being comfortable for citizens if you don't have a car and basically live there. Like any
I think
foreigner is
it's
just
car culture
excluded.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
obviously that's not true in major cities like New York and Chicago and,
yeah, like
but in
I
LA,
was
it
in
totally is in
Miami.
your car.
Like the
Yeah.
system was Miami,
Yeah.
and that's where I just was for Art Basel,
Yeah. You definitely need
and
a
I'm
car
like,
there.
dude, the city is so big. Why can't I take a bus, a train? Like I get it. It's so car centric that I will never be able to take a train, which would be way more efficient. But st- I'll not get too deep into that. What I just wanted to say is
Yeah.
I'm not ranting about the public transport system, because if we get to Germany, I can do an episode about that, and mismanagement of money, because they would actually need to have bounties to prioritize, because they can't. They get billions from the state. No, stop me. But the thing is, if you have the ratings, and I know that is the way I have to get around because there's no public transport or whatever. If I know that I'm actually getting, because I don't know the area, to the point where I have to get to, and I may actually have a nice conversation while driving and learn some stuff about the area. Oh, dude, I'm up to pay 50% more than what
Yeah.
the bottom is, or even double.
And by the way, the other side of that is that this 3-star driver leaves Uber and joins Lyft, the other car share service.
Oh
And
yeah,
Lyft doesn't know their Uber rating, and so now they're just
yeah,
hiring a bad driver, right? And
yeah,
it's the same. It's like if you're on eBay and you're scamming people, and so now you have a bad rating, and then you just give a whatever Facebook Marketplace. Well, no one even knows that you were scamming people, right? So that's the negative side, and then you were describing the positive side, which is also true, which is like, hey, if I'm a 5-star eBay rater and I decide to open up on Facebook Marketplace, like people should know that I have a 10-year history of selling online with happy customers, right? And so this is like when we come all the way back to the beginning of that conversation of like a public
yes.
ledger or an open database. These are like powerful use cases where where everyone can kind of see the ratings. The ratings become
Yep.
transportable. This is like where you
Yep.
want the data to be open and
Yep.
transferable. And then, by the way, you're a company and you're starting a new business, and you want this same workforce or
Yes.
seller force to be a part of your platform. It's like, bam, you just
Yes.
have all of that data right on day one. They can just come right over. They bring their reputation. It's actually, if you're an eBay seller, it's hard to go to another platform.
Yep.
Um, because
But
you lose your reputation, right? But our reputation
also,
is going to
yeah,
be
you
portable
said
and move
your
online.
reputation travels. Also, as a business, the means of contact travels. Because if you're using a protocol like Farcaster, to get back to the protocol point, if you have an open protocol, your reputation carries over. So I know you're a 5-star guy to hire you, work with you, whatever, on the new platform, and I have a means of contacting you. Because if I just took the data over, I have no way to contact you. So now my platform, the new platform, which has the best UI but nobody knows, actually has all the people in there, like you just said. And this is
Yeah.
the insane part of building open and building on open tools as a business opportunity.
Yeah. And as Farcaster is growing, you're now totally seeing it being integrated
Yep.
into other apps that are not about Farcaster, right? It's like it could be your wallet app that just
Did you
shows that
see
you're
that?
about to send money. Yeah. You're
Like,
like about to
like
send money to someone who is a legitimate human being, has
ju-
followers.
just for the business people who haven't seen the MetaMask map, as most people probably haven't. Just imagine opening your bank account and typing in a new company's address where you have to wire 100,000 US dollars, or it could even be a personal transaction of a couple thousand, um, for say a holiday. And how many times do you actually check the IBAN or the address, the account address, the PayPal address, the Venmo, whatever, to actually make sure it's the right person? A lot, right? Because you know you're not getting it back. On the blockchain, you're actually not getting it back. There's no customer support. But what if you could actually see that this person is following you on Instagram, you're following them on Instagram, on Twitter, on wherever, right? And on Farcaster, what they build is if you type in the address of somebody to send money to on the blockchain, you will see who actually follows them, if you follow them, and their whole social graph, like their whole social network travels with you, even their attestations. So you could actually know this is the right address. Thank God I'm seeing it in the first place. I don't
Yeah.
have to triple and double check, and I'm living a more comfortable life.
Yeah. Totally. And like other use cases is like if you create a profile on my new site, um, and you connect with your wallet, I can now go and just find your Farcaster profile. So I can just put that right on your profile, so people can click on it and go find you.
Yep.
This is all like permissionless, right? It's like I don't have to use Twitter APIs and worry about them shutting it down or charging me for it per se.
You to do that. You may not, which is a benefit of being open.
That's right. And this is like, I think, a big business I'm building on top, like a big pro I'm building on top of protocol. And I think a classic example is like Facebook had this moment where social games got really popular, and Zynga made many millions of dollars and became a public company. So they built a whole business on top of the fact that Facebook offered APIs to make games, and then Facebook's priorities changed. They shut down all of those APIs, and then they just killed all of these businesses, right?
Yep.
And and so that's happened time and time again when you build. I mean, right now we're watching it happen in real time on ChatGPT. Like all of these companies that are building on top of the ChatGPT API is great until ChatGPT's priorities change and decide that you can't do this anymore.
Yep.
Um, but when you're building your business on top of a protocol, there's like no one can shut it down. It's like you can run your own node. The protocol is published and free. They can never shut it down from you. And so if you're building a software company from scratch today and you could do so on top of a protocol, um, you're you're really protected from a lot of that kind of risk. Like you would much rather be building on a open protocol version of ChatGPT, where if the company behind it decided that they no longer wanted third-party developers, we still have access to all the stuff, right? Instead, you're
Yep.
like really relying on the fact on their frankly goodwill that they're going to keep allowing you to have a business.
Yep. And if you think that doesn't happen, just Google Elasticsearch license. This is one of the most used databases in cloud. And what the company saw was, oh, they're just using the open source tool without paying. We want more money. Let's change the license so they can't do that. What the community did, spearheaded by Amazon's AWS team, was they just used the last version they were legally allowed to use and just forked it, made it their own. And open source developed it further, and now you have one company competing with their own product just because they became too greedy and didn't build on the open and didn't have a good enough business model to actually monetize the open. Because you can monetize the open, just offer paid support. Like, people are legally binded to pay you to get support for your open source system if they want to use it in a big corporation that has to follow these protocols. What is so hard about that? You just have to be
There's
comfortable
tons.
that that is your business model.
That's right. There's tons of different. Um, there's tons of different ways to monetize open source software or open protocols. And again, it's like you can basically it's like, do you want to be an app or do you want to be a platform? And if you want to be a platform, lots of people are going to monetize your platform, and you're going to be there too. And if you have a strong
Yes.
vision, you are going to take the lion's share of it.
But
But by having a platform means lots of people are going to do a lot of the work for you in marketing, acquiring
yes,
users,
but you
making
have to
daily
be good
actives,
enough.
all of it. That's
You
right.
if your solution, like Elasticsearch wants, like if your solution isn't good enough to be the main thing, you may just have value as the protocol. And then if you haven't monetized the protocol, you're out and they will use it and you have lost. So make sure
Yeah,
you're actually good. Like, this is one thing. Like, people think, oh, this is unfair. This is unfair. The free market is the most meritocracy thing, the most win by actually being the best ever.
that's it.
Why do you
That's it.
think
You have
so
to have
many
like, I
Olympic
mean,
runners are from Africa?
yeah,
If I told you in the 19th century that Africans will be the best runners if you just let them compete, you would laugh at me.
yeah.
Look at Olympics now.
And then I would say, like, if you're building a company and you don't think you're the best company to be building that, like, why are you in the game in the first place, right?
That
Uh,
as well.
so,
That
like, you
as
need to
well.
have the right, you need to have the confidence and the team and the skills and all that stuff. But like,
Yes.
build the best organization you can, go after your vision in the biggest way you can. And in a lot of cases, that will be building a platform and an open
Also,
protocol that builds an entire ecosystem of companies that spawn from it.
if you're not the best, but you have the idea and the mind to prompt the best, you can set up something similar to Purple or the DAO structures, the marketing of superfans,
Yeah,
the incentivization of superfans, where the superfans actually give you the money for builders to build what you want to build by fostering that community and just making the best proposals. And then you could also be like, oh, well, now I actually just do full-time proposals. I make a proposal that I'll be a full-time proposer and I need $100,000 to live
totally.
for the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's right.
That
When you've driven value, that like that being a valuable role means people will pay you for it, right?
Dude, in ENS, like the naming system for blockchain, people are paid and compensated to work on it full time, and the DAO, like their decentralized, their voting structure votes on their salaries and allocates. Like, if you haven't been good, you'll get a new salary for the next year. If not, you haven't. Like, that is the
Yeah.
most awesome meritocratic thing I've seen. People will be afraid of that because they think they're not good enough, or they're afraid of being judged every year. But as a free market thing, to just, if you just want to get the best out of the best with the best
Yeah.
tools in the best amount of time with the least amount of resources, it's insane.
Like, and then like just back to like your internal company ops. You probably, if you have a company at size, you almost definitely are underpaying someone, and you're almost definitely overpaying someone, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
so, how can you bring these market dynamics where people are ultimately fairly paid because the market decides whether the market is internal
Yeah.
or
It
external. Like in the ENS case, the market is all of the voters who are people who hold
yes.
the ENS token, right?
Yeah, and you can delegate it. So for example,
Yeah.
in a corporation, say you're just a junior, so you just have one vote, and some seniors may have two or three, and you're like, oh, this senior actually knows way more than I do. Let me give him his vote. That is kind of how ENS works. So you just give
Yeah.
your votes to the people. Might not be seniors. Maybe a junior is better. So the senior says, I have way more votes, but this guy knows more. Let me give him my votes, and whatever his vote is, my voting power will support that. That's how the token voting there works with the delegates. But this is awesome. Like, you may not want to do it for monthly salary. So what you may do is have a good monthly salary for everyone, but then the bonus may actually be is a function of your attestations. You can also do internal attestations, like
Yes.
internal,
Yeah.
oh, on this project, internal project, he was so awesome. And if you only have a 4.5 star rating internally and not a 5 star, you'll get less of a bonus end of year. So everyone is kind of earning the same base salary, but the top performers get so much attestations, they get so many votes in your, like, say, $1 million full company voting bonus round, and people may vote for themselves. But even if everyone votes for themselves, they all get the same bonus, and some people will not vote for themselves, and then you actually get the fair distribution. So, or you can just
Yeah, and
disable
I'll just
voting
say
for
that
yourself.
like one of the things I think is interesting about this is that a lot of companies will have end of the year bonuses, and how fair are they really, right? It's like there's a manager who decides who gets the
Yep.
bonuses, and in a perfect world, a perfect system, I'm sure there are many of these. He or she is really giving out those bonuses based on work, right? But also, I've been in around organizations where it's like, well, your favorite person gets the biggest bonus, and it's not, and so it's a little bit, obviously they do good work, but it's not all about the work, where you're trying to help someone who's really struggling on the team. They're not pulling their weight, but you like them, so you're trying to do it. Where again, if these are like attestations based, um where it's like, let's just in the engineering contest, you have like merged a significant pull request, right? Like,
Yep.
not every pull request, because all I'm in there, I'm just changing copy and changing the H1s and the H2s. But then someone comes in and like makes an, is responsible for a large part of like an entirely new feature. So you give them an attestation. And then when it comes time for a bonus, or in crypto terms, retroactive funding, we can look at those
Yep.
attestations and be like, Samuel crushed it this quarter. Look at all the attestations. Look at the ones he got from his managers. Look at the ones he got from his teammates. Look at the ones he got from external clients. And yeah, you just have a much better picture of who's doing great work.
Also, you're fostering positive feedback. So you're fostering a positive, goal-oriented feedback mechanism with the attestations that is lacking in many companies and cultures. And as well, the bonus structure, because you're doing out of that, is first of all transparent, and second of all, it is not dependent on the manager's grace, which, as you said, their managers will give awesome bonuses in the way they're attended for actual performance. But
Yeah,
then there may be people in the team who feel like, oh, that was not because of performance, because their subjective view on performance. But then you can also take it off the manager, because they will not be like looked upon badly from their colleagues just because they gave a bonus. But now the bonus is actually given by the colleagues, so the manager is like, I didn't give that bonus. I just voted, and you did too.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. But like going back to the actual like Web3 and blockchain thing, we talked a lot about how one can leverage things around and build on top of, but the whole thing itself, like what kind of core problem or business need do you think it solves? Because we also talked about not everyone will need blockchain, so who does need it? What's like the core problem it solves?
Yeah, so I think that's a hard question, because I think it solves lots of problems, right? And so, we even here we've talked about everything from marketing memes to coordinating your community.
Yep.
There's other problems we didn't talk about like well, a little bit we talked about ratings, about like the importance of transparency of information. These are all like very, very different things, right? And I think to some extent it's almost like asking the question of like, well, what problem does the internet solve? And you maybe had said like, oh, you can send email from people from point A to point B, but now it's like fast forward to 2023, and there are thousands or more problems that the internet can solve, right? And
Yep.
so I just sort of fundamentally feel blockchain is the same, and so solves many problems, from like proving you own an asset, whether that's online or offline, to fostering community and building organizations that can operate through voting. Um, so yeah, I'm not going to close with like a silver bullet here, because I think it's like the possibilities are endless, and it sort of goes to like my same point of like, just don't drop your NFT project. It's like, what is your
Yep.
initiative? What are your problems? And then is blockchain a potential solution to those problems?
Do you have any kind of guidelines or things to look at, favorite resources, when an executive that isn't as deep or knowledgeable as maybe you are looks at, oh, how can I not make an NFT project? How can I actually make it make sense instead of just slapping NFT for the marketing or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say that I've had very few in the bull market. I talked to lots of people who were like, "What is this NFT thing? How do I get in on it? I want to make money."
Yep.
I'd say in the last couple of years, most of the people come with some knowledge of it. They also typically maybe have someone in their team who's interested in it, and so it's been a while since I've been like talking to someone completely fresh on one of these topics. And
Yep.
I would. It's funny because I guess I don't really have a single resource, and again, it's a little bit like what problem are you trying to solve, and then I will go and find the good examples of this stuff, and um, and send you an email, and here's 5 links. Now that being said, if you're interested in sort of some of the topics we've talked about today, I think Nouns is a really interesting DAO that has
So
multiple layers, and I would encourage
where
people
would
to check
one
it
go?
out.
Where would
That's
one go to find it?
nouns.wtf. You can see how
So
they
N
sell
O
membership.
U. So it's
Yeah,
NOUWNS dot
it's N O N
WTTF.
NOUNS dot WTF. So noun like a public, like a person,
Awesome.
place, or thing.
And for everyone listening, that's a domain. You can just use your phone right now and go to it.
Yeah, yeah, nouns.wtf. And you'll be presented right away with how they sell membership, which they do so in a daily auction. You can go check out all the proposals. First of all, you can see the size of the treasury, which is large, and then you can see all the proposals people are making across it.
I'll
And
pull
yeah,
up
it's
their
just
treasury right now.
yeah, it's large, and yeah, it's just that, and this is like a big example. This is like a successful example of doing many of the things we talked about today: rallying a community, offering small grants, offering large grants, having people market nouns for you, having people build software around nouns. All of this happens within nouns. So I think if there's like a single place to go check out an interesting open source project that runs around all of these principles, I think nouns is a really good one. Um, and then just know that you can scale that down to a treasury of $1,000 or scale that
Yep.
up to a treasury of $1 billion. But I think it captures a lot of the things we've talked about here, and certainly my mind share.
And everything else is more like, oh, talk to people, look it up, join Farcaster, ask in channels. Like actually ask in channels, not just post on your feed, ask in channels. So if you're interested in nouns, go to the Farcaster nouns channel and just ask a random question. Also, there's no dumb question. Like I'm pretty sure if somebody just asked what is nouns in the nouns channel, it would actually be a highly engaging tweet instead of a dumb
Yep,
question.
exactly, and it's
Um,
happened, and totally people get great examples. And so then the shout out to Farcaster is that it's just um, it's really a network of experts still at this point. It hasn't really
yep.
broken out into just everyone with an opinion. Here, it's like people who are like pretty attuned to crypto, all the more and all kinds of interests and people are joining every day. But totally, if you want to like find the experts, if you want to just learn more, I don't think there's a better place on the internet to
Yep.
learn about crypto and Web3 than on Farcaster.
So
Um,
if you want to check that out, that's warpcast.com, WARPCAST.com. Just follow there, look through, scroll a little bit, explore the channels. Also, otherwise, you'd say probably just Googling, right? Just look for the topics and resources, though that can be really time consuming, right? So there's no go to resource besides nouns and maybe Farcaster channels.
yeah, that's it. That's all I really have. And then everything's just pretty scattered. I don't find that to be like one great media site to go to. Um, So yeah, you can learn a lot. Farkets are channels you can think of as like subreddits.
Yep.
And so go find your area of interest. If it's cooking, there's a cooking channel, there's a coffee channel. Those things are not necessarily Web3, although they can touch on it. But then there's, the far end of that, like learn about specific protocols or learn about NFTs or whatever, business development of Web3. There's channels for everything. And so I learn a lot. I follow lots of channels and stuff outside my interests just because there's so much I can learn from the whole
Yep.
space. But also, you can like deep dive into a single one if it's like, what is this base blockchain? Like, let me dive into that channel and learn all about base.
Yep. Yep. Also, if people have any questions for you, we'll leave your Wobcast or Farcaster down in the show notes so people can have a look and just ask you generally. Um, but I think you'd be pretty open to answering questions,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I would love to talk to people. My DMs are always open. I'll talk on the feed. Yeah, give me a follow, and yeah, let's continue the conversation on Warpcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining in and giving all those actual tactics of how one can actually leverage the tech.
Yeah, first of all, it was great meeting you, and thanks for having me. And Merry Christmas.
Awesome. Thank you. Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you for listening, and thanks for the guests for coming on to Techsuite for the C-Suite. In the description below, or the show notes, whatever you want to call them, you will find the awesome resources our guests mentioned to get you started. You can find links to our guests, and you all can also find a summary, takeaways, and other links to keep connected with the show. Thank you so much for listening. Have an awesome day.